we'll talk today about follow-up, and then we'll talk about planned giving. And please, if you all have any questions about anything, don't hesitate to interrupt. The chat box is a fine place to start, or just interrupt. So we're a small enough group, we can certainly take your questions. The first thing I want to share, I'm going to share my screen. And what I'm about to share was this morning was put into the, or I guess I should say onto the Beginning a Culture of Generosity webpage. Okay, so if you were there yesterday, you would not have found these. They're in the documents section. I went ahead and wrote a couple of emails. Let me gonna increase the size a little bit here and see if that helps. Again, you can download these directly out of the Beginning a Culture of Generosity webpage. But I went ahead and wrote a couple samples for you. You're welcome to steal these as long as you can put in the appropriate information. And you know, be careful to make sure that the information that you would have that would correspond would be what we would want to share. So you know, after the week when the council and stewardship team give, I wrote you that one. By the way, I've had somebody grow their giving by 353% this year. I've forgotten what the starting dollar amount for that was and the ending dollar amount was. That same congregation had 8 families, 8 households who increased by 50% or more. And so that's why I've got the line about that percentage growth, because typically if we look close enough, we find somebody that grows their percentage by a dramatic amount. If you don't happen to have that one in your early section of donors, then you know, take that out, put something else in. But then I've also written then the one for the second week. You'll definitely want to edit this and actually put a real website address in there for where you can find an online giving form. You know, but I've given you the template. All right. Certainly you're going to have to adjust. I love telling people what the growth has been weekly. The numbers, you know, the annual numbers tend to overwhelm some people sometimes and think, well, I can't grow my giving by $600 a week or by $6,000, so I just won't do anything. So I'd rather people know that the average so far has increased by, you know, $600 a year, which is, you know, a little less than $2 a day. Which, by the way, in my earlier call this morning, I had a congregation that got their first 10 cards in for a total net increase for the year of $6,000. So the average donor increased by $600, which, what is that, $1.75 or something like, or a day. Anyway, I need to spend some more time on math. I'm not that good at it in front of a group of people, but I'm happy with $600 a year from the first 10 families on average from that congregation. So any questions on follow-up emails? And remember, we do that because anybody who hasn't turned in a card yet, we're still cultivating them. Anybody who has turned in a card, we're wanting to affirm them that they weren't the only one to grow their generosity, okay? And that's really, really important. And so that's why, you know, I want that email out after the council gives, and then I want it out the first week. And then for subsequent weeks, you can adjust that. And certainly verbal announcements can be similar to what's printed there. Matt, you got a question?
Yeah, so love that idea of going, oh, we had, you know, this percentage giving from somebody from a household. How would you word something like that from somebody who was in the goose egg zero giving, and like, you know, we had somebody who came and pledged like $8,500 for next year who hadn't given anything the last 3 years. So how would you word that?
Carefully. Because you don't want people saying, well, why didn't they give before, but they're giving now?
Find another example. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, or lump a couple examples together. Like at the time you got that gift, how many gifts did you have? Or, you know, so could you say with the first 10 gifts in, we have a net increase for next year of $13,000, which is an average of, I'm making numbers up, $2,200 a family. I mean, just maybe not put themselves out there. Now, boy, the fact that they had the capacity before and didn't live into it is, I'm going to have to think about that one, Matt. I like it, but I'm going to have to think about it. Because on one level, you don't want people saying, well, why didn't they give last year? But on another level, you want to celebrate. That's going to help your bottom line.
I think it's a proximity thing, right? So COVID, we're worshiping online, and they live an hour away, and so they didn't drive here very frequently, and now they're with us every week. So there's maybe something to that.
Yeah. And maybe they're a person to give you a quote about that. And so more of, virtual worship has made us feel much more connected to this ministry, and we're excited to be able to re-engage even though we live an hour away, and to be fully present with you again. And then somehow you get I don't know if I'm going to tell the story from 0 to 8,500, because I don't want them to feel bad about previous years. I want them to feel good about it. But I sure might have, that help you with your overall numbers. Oh, Michael, absolutely. There are plenty of people in our congregations that are not living up to their capacity. I do wish we could give it a percentage. I wish they would have given $1 last year. Yeah. Great problem to have, Matt. I think I'm going to group them together probably. If I have another thought, I'll come back to it. So any other questions here? So we talk I got a couple more things on follow-up. Actually, I'll go ahead and start jumping into them, but please, I love questions. If you read it, the second email promised that we would do a phone call, at a certain time. And the promise, I keep calling it a threat. I'm not sure why I do that, but the promise of a phone call will spur people to give. The challenge gift helps. People don't want the phone call. People are tired of phone calls after the election season. But it will drive people to the decision. And that's what we want. We want to give people the urgency to make their commitment. The challenge gift does that. The fact that a phone call is coming next Sunday, if I don't get it in, does that. And the phone calls are gentle and nice. It's not, hey, I need you to tell me right now what you're giving. It's, can you go to the website, click on the link and make your gift tonight? That's, did you know we happen to have a challenge gift, and, we're too short and your gift would really help, or, those kinds of things. So, and actually many of you are in the DC area. Meredith and I have been doing this together at Abiding Presence for a number of years. And her phoners found that people really like for the phoner to stay on the phone with them while they go to the website and make their commitment. It doesn't have anything to do with the fact they don't want to give. It has everything to do with the fact that their lives are too busy and they just keep putting it off, and that they've wanted to make the commitment. And if the phoner will stick with them until they do, there's a sense of relief and joy in that. And that's real live testing in the Metro DC area. So anyway, I lift that up for you. In a phonathon, it's perfectly fine to leave a message if voicemails aren't full. And then, so use the challenge gift, send some emails, leave a phone message. And if you have a challenge gift, you don't quit until you get the challenge, right? At some point, it's important to change from blanket messaging to targeted messaging. You don't want to keep nagging people to give a gift who have already given a gift, right? But at first, you want to let people know that made a gift that you're doing well, right? But then at some point, you've got to target the last 25 people you need in order to get the last 15 gifts to meet your challenge goal to wrap this up well. And you don't want to nag the people that have already committed. You want to inform them early, but then you don't want to nag them as you're continuing on. You know, I usually say nagging is a spiritual gift. A bishop corrected me the other day and told me persistence is actually in the list or something. So anyway, questions about follow-up? So any of you, just by quick show of hands, how many of you have started to get commitments in? Okay, so a handful of you. How are they looking, just in general?
In 1 week, we got as many as we got last year total.
Really? Do you have the net increase and such yet?
I don't have those numbers on what we haven't processed that yet.
Okay. I mean, you're 8,500 to the good, which is super, but it'd be great to see what they are. Ron, do you have numbers?
Of the first 60 that came in, 65% are new or increased gifts over last year.
Excellent. Excellent. Any major decreases from what you've seen?
We've only had 2 very minor ones in our congregation, and it's very simple, just a couple $100.
Good. So the template I've given you on those emails, I think, can really help energize and spur some other people. And that's really healthy in the midst of, I mean, you're still in capital campaign giving. So that's really nice to see annual fund getting a nice little bump. Any other just general feeling as to how it's going yet? Next time I am going to ask for a little bit more thorough kind of reporting. And part of it will come as a survey afterwards that you can certainly have your financial folks take time to look at. But we want to fully evaluate the effectiveness. Sounds like Matt and Ron will use your numbers and maybe quit taking other numbers if they don't look as good. But no, that's great. That's great. Anything else on follow-up before I start talking about planned giving? No? We got the quiet after lunch group. All right.
Mike, I've got some construction work going on in the house today. So if if they're making too much noise, I'll have to drop off.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, you can pick up the recording wherever you have to leave off on us. So
Right.
very good.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. So I'm gonna talk about planned giving, and again, I just can't have a group together like this and not spend some time on it. The first few slides I'm going to go through kind of quickly. I am going to send you the slide presentation. Okay, so if there's something that looks interesting, just know that you'll get a little bit more time with it kind of later on. But what I really want to do here is just kind of lay the case that it's a good time for planned giving. Okay. And when I speak planned giving, I'm really talking about estate giving, end of life commitments. But let me kind of jump through this first part here first. So historical context. In 1907, there was a recession twice as bad as the one we lived through in 2008. In that, and at the end of that, lots of charitable gift annuity activity happened, which is activity, a charitable gift annuity is an instrument where you put an asset into it and then it pays you a stream of income guaranteed for the rest of your life. Often at very favorable rates, because at the end of your life, the corpus goes to the charity, okay? And so at the end of that recession, lots of people were looking for ways for guaranteed income stream, and gift annuities provided that, all right? In 1918, there was a pandemic. We've heard about that this year for obvious reasons. This is when mass-based fundraising really began, right? Prior to this pandemic, philanthropy was primarily the role of the wealthy elites. Very few people in America were philanthropic, but it was like the Rockefellers and their folks. Mass-based fundraising started in the pandemic of 1918. It was the equivalent to $11.5 billion in today's dollars, which is a lot of money. Okay, so and it was actually seen as patriotic. I thought that was interesting. So the Great Depression, unemployment at 25%, stock market loss of 90%. The drop in giving wasn't immediate, but it was the Depression that created the March of Dimes. And by the way, a dime in 1938 is worth $1.80 today. All right. But it was the small gifts to reach large goals. And again, lots of giving took place. September 11th, national tragedy. New York City was affected for fundraising, the rest of the country relatively unscathed from it. In the 2008 recession, there was significant giving increase by those 55 and older, with donors 65 and older giving a disproportionate part of the total. Reason I pause there is, what do we always hear about demographics in the ELCA? There's always this lament about our age, right? 55 and older, which, don't get me wrong, I share that lament congregationally that, I wish we would get younger. At the same time, from a fundraising standpoint, our demographics are pretty solid for generosity and for raising money, and in particular for planned giving. Okay, so just a brief history to show that we're not in a dire situation, that we actually have some things going for us. And I know a lot of economists are predicting the next 10 years in the stock market to not be that robust, which actually bodes well for things like charitable gift annuities, charitable remainder trusts. So even if the economic outlook isn't as rosy as we might like, there's a case to be made that a lot of robust giving happens when the economy is not great. In fact, there are similar studies that show when the economy is going wonderfully, charitable giving goes down because we don't see our neighbor in need. And a lot of people don't like to give away assets that are growing in value. They want to keep that growth for themselves. So just a little bit of context setting for you there. All right. So as we look to the future, we believe there's going to be a significant growth in intermediaries. And we've seen that over the last 6 years with the campaign for the ELCA and the work of the ELCA Foundation. Okay. So they're doing work on behalf of other ministries. They become an umbrella organization. Similar, and they have what's called donor advised funds, but so does everybody, like Schwab and Fidelity and your local community foundation. Everybody's got a donor advised fund. And for those of you that don't know what a donor advised fund is, it's a charitable instrument whereby a donor can establish a fund that as soon as they put money into it or put an asset into it, it's a charitable gift. Okay, they lose control of it from a spending it on themselves standpoint, but they keep control of it until they tell the fund or they advise the fund where to send that money. Okay, and oh, I forgot the number, but at the turn of the calendar, I want to say there was $43 billion worth of money sitting in donor advised funds. I need to look that stat up. But donor advised funds, it's great for a donor because the money goes in immediately, but charities need to, have to wait for it or have to ask for it as it sits there, all right? Those are going to continue to grow. If you're not familiar with those, you need to get familiar with them because you're going to come across more and more donors that have them. Many people use their brokerage house for these funds because it's easy for them to put in appreciated stocks and mutual funds from their brokerage house and then do their giving from there, all right? There is going to be less tax motivation for giving, but we also think non-cash gifts, meaning stocks and real estate, are going to continue to grow. And just so you know, those that are over 65 are giving over half the stock gifts that are given anyway, all right? Couple more things looking to the future. So Connie, I see your chat question. Those that are over 65 are giving over half of the stock gifts that are given. They're not giving half their portfolio. People aren't that generous. So if only they would, then if they would, you all wouldn't be hanging out with me. So, so when stock markets decline, wealthy donors tend to shift from immediate gifts to estate gifts, all right? Many times so that they can increase their own income through those estate gifts. In the green, gift annuities and remainder trusts are going to see significant growth in the coming year. So let me give you a quick overview of what a charitable gift annuity is. It works similar to a certificate of deposit, whereby you invest, let's just say $50,000 into a charitable gift annuity. Depending upon your age, the charity then pays you a fixed rate of income for the rest of your life. Different from a certificate of deposit, you can never get the principal back, okay? You get that guaranteed stream of income for the rest of your life, but the principal goes away. At your death, whatever's left goes to the charity, okay? That's a gift annuity. The older you are, the more it pays you, all right? Charitable remainder trust is a little bit different. They tend to pay about 5 or 6%, which is still better than a lot of investments that you can get. It's guaranteed. And you can do those not only for your own lifetime, but you can do that for a period of 20, up to a period of 20 years after your life. Now, with a recent change in law for the way survivors, non-spouse survivors can receive an IRA, we believe a tremendous number of IRAs will start being gifted to a charitable remainder trust so that they can then pay out to kids for 20 years, and then the remainder will come to the charity at the end of the 20 years. And the reason for that is the CARES Act that was passed this year as a response to the pandemic changed that a non-spouse can no longer receive an IRA over their lifetime. They now have to receive an IRA from their parents, normally over a period of 10 years, all right? And that 10-year period of time tends to happen during their peak earning years. So we think combining these is gonna grow. Now, I've given you a whole lot of terminology. The good news is you don't have to be able to answer any of these questions for people. You just have to know that this exists, and you need to find partners like the ELCA Foundation to help sit down with people to answer these questions. I want to tell you about one other gift that I recently helped someone get. There's a widow living in a home fully paid for, who will never need to sell that home in order to survive. Like, she's got healthcare that will come to her home to take care of her forever. She wanted to increase her giving to her church, and she didn't have any more money to do that with. And I said, well, what are you going to do with your house? And she said, well, I've already set that up in my will to give it to the church. And I said, well, you know, you're not going to get a tax deduction when you die. If you don't need that, and please hear, she doesn't need the income from her house, or she never needs the money from her house. So if you go ahead and give it now in what's called a life estate, you get the privilege of living in it, including the privilege of paying taxes and insurance on it, and continue to live in it as if it's your own, but you'll get a tax deduction that will likely eliminate your income tax for the next 5 or 6 years. So she's done that, and now she can increase her giving to charity because she's not paying income taxes, because she went ahead and gifted her home during her lifetime instead of waiting till death when she wouldn't get the tax break. I tell you that story just so you know, a lot of people don't know what they can do. In fact, well, it'll be my last slide. I'll flip to that. Oh, no, I won't. It's too far away. 32%, I had 80 congregational leaders on a Zoom call doing council leadership stuff. And I asked the question, have you included your church in your estate plans? Will you ever? Might you, or do you just not know? You probably would, but you don't know how. 32% of those 80 people said, I'd kind of like to, but I just don't know how. That's significant. we need to be followed up with them so that they can learn ways to do it that benefit them, because it'll benefit the church as well. All right. So we need to create a culture where charitable estate giving is valued. And the primary way in which you do that is by honoring gifts that are both included to your church, but also the average Lutheran that works with the ELCA Foundation to make a gift leaves their gift to 3 entities, the church being, the congregation being one of them. And we need to celebrate all aspects of what people leave gifts to. We need to live into the concept of abundance and not think we need to get as much as we can for our local church. I once helped a woman leave 1/3 of her estate to her church, 1/3 to the camp I worked for, and 1/3 to the seminary. And had I tried to make a play for all of that money or a larger percent, I would have lost all of the money. She probably wouldn't even have made the gift. We have to celebrate the totality of it and not just our share of it. The first thing congregations need to do is make sure you have gift acceptance policies. I think gifts that you get from people who pass away should go to endowment. All right, that's just my thought. You need to have your own policies though. I think every congregation needs $1.5 million to $2.5 million in a facility care endowment so that you never again have to have a special campaign to pave your parking lot, reshingle your roof, or Matt, this one's for you, to tuck point on your bricks and whatever else is involved in that. Then after you do that, you need to establish your endowment guidelines. So gift acceptance policies and endowment guidelines are 2 different things. And you need to have those set up as well. I think you need to have monthly plan giving stories and communications. I think you need to set goals for the number of new expectancies that you would get each quarter. An expectancy is somebody saying, I've included you. We like to celebrate people when they include you in their plan, rather than having to wait for people to die in order to begin to celebrate. Twice a year, you should have a plan giving workshop. I know a lot of churches that have a plan giving workshop, say in April, and then they say, well, we did plan giving for the year. Well, that's not going to cut it. It's got to happen a couple of times a year with regular communication. And then I think you need to have an annual thank you event. And part of the purpose of that thank you event is in order to make sure that people's estates are set up the way they think they are. I've heard it shared that 70% of Americans don't have a will that is going to fund, or don't have an estate plan that is going to fund the way they think it will. Okay, 70% don't fund the way people think they will. And so we need to help make sure people keep up with that so that they do. All right. I think 100% of your council and endowment team should indicate an expectancy by the end of the year. And I don't think that's that hard. I was 31 when I made my first expectancy to a charity. They were a secondary beneficiary, but they're now a primary beneficiary because I'm older now. All right, my kids don't need it all. I think every congregation should have a named plan giving communicator. It came up in my earlier meeting, and this person should not be the pastor, okay? But we should have somebody whose primary motivation and job at the church is to communicate about plan giving, all right? That's the only way I think it actually happens, and happens the way it should. And then create a top 10 list. And top 10 lists are determined by people's age, their connection to the ministry, and whether they have children or not. It is not connected to their wealth. Estate giving is the great equalizer. And so those are things we look at. Oh, here's the poll that I told you about. Will you leave a planned gift to your congregation in your state? 20% said yes, which by the way is above the national average. 13% said no, and I don't plan to. 35% said no, but I do plan to. Now, experience tells me that they never get around to it because they don't want to deal with it. And then 32% said maybe, but I don't know how. We need to work on that 67% of people, 2/3, who might if we actually continue to encourage it. If the ELCA Foundation gets involved, the average gift that they secure is $300,000. It's shared between 3 organizations. Do you think there's value in converting those 67% of people that haven't done it but might? There's tremendous value in it, all right? So then some tools that I want to share, and then we'll come back to questions and see what all I just confused you about. So estate planning, it's not just about a will, but everybody needs one, okay? But a lot of people don't like to get them because they're expensive and you have to sit down with an attorney, you have to schedule it, you have to pay for it, you have to think through it, all right? My firm has partnered with a company called Gentreo. The reason we partnered with them is primarily that they helped us design the program. It will actually encourage people. If they go in through the website that's on your screen, there'll be a video from me telling people the reason you're getting a discount on this product and the reason we're inviting you to it is because we would like you to leave part of your estate to a charity. Okay, I mean, and then when the person actually goes through this is an online will development tool. As they go through it, it will ask them, so how much of your estate do you want to leave to a charity and which charity? And can we notify them for you so that they know that your gift is coming? It costs $85 for the first year. And as long as you can work your way through it and write your will and your power of attorney, your pet power of attorney, your living will, you can cancel after that first year and you have valid documents as long as you execute them the way that you'll be trained by Gentreo to do. You'll have valid documents that you can put in a safe deposit box or wherever, and you can cancel and not have to pay anything else, okay? Now for a reduced price thereafter, you can use what they call the family vault, which allows you to store all your documents digitally and to share them with whoever digitally, with whoever needs to have them, all right? When my mother-in-law died, we found her life insurance policy in her sock drawer, not where we would have thought to look. A couple of weeks ago, I asked my mom where her will was. I know that I'm the executor, and she told me, and then she said, oh wait, maybe it's not there. So I have no idea where my parents' will is, and I'm their executor. If they had a family vault, it would be shared with me and I would have access to it when I need it, okay? Anyway, we think it's a great tool. I don't care if you use it or not, but we're making it available to you. I've had somebody use it who had a person during COVID that had bone cancer, didn't have a will, but wanted to leave their house to the church. They used this product to create a will and have since left a house to the church. So I do think it's a valuable tool. If you'd rather see an attorney, I think wills usually cost between $2,500 and $5,000. But if you want to have somebody to talk to walk you through it, then you should do that. All right. But you should have a will. All right. And you should have a valid will. All right. If you've moved recently, you might want to look at it. All right. Just a couple screenshots from some of the Gentreo pages. This one is just your dashboard. It shows you, how far you've done on each piece. The family vault shows you what pieces you have, your emergency card, who you've shared it with, those kinds of things. I think it's a neat tool, but again, if you don't want to keep up with it, then you don't have to. And by the way, if you do keep up with the subscription, you can change your will at any time and just re-execute a new one. But anyway, there's resources as to, there's videos and other articles and stuff for people to learn more. I think to get started, somebody at the church ought to use it, and then they ought to witness to it. And then small group gatherings should have watch parties for some of the videos, and then use some of the other print resources and some of your sharing of information. This is how your planned giving communicator could really begin to implement some things, all right? And then I've written you a sample bulletin announcement that will help encourage other people to use the tool and to get a valid will and to witness to the fact that they've included the church in their estate plans. So the same thing that's true in an annual stewardship appeal is true in estate giving. When you get people to share their generosity story of it, it will encourage other people to act that way, all right? But if you keep the idea of estate giving a secret, you'll occasionally get a few people to give gifts like this. I've known people in some of your churches that everybody said, oh, of course, that person, they gave the organ, of course they'll leave us in their estate plans. Well, they didn't, because nobody ever really asked them to. And so we need to ask them. So then at the earlier session, people said, okay, you just gave us a lot of stuff. What do we do? Here it is a little more simply. Gift acceptance policies. all right? That's number one. Should take you about a month. The LCA Foundation can be helpful. Endowment policies should take you about a month. The LCA Foundation can help you with that. Plan giving workshop, for at least for your leaders, so that you can begin to get stories. That should be the third month. Then the fourth month should be working up your top 10 list and beginning to get information in front of people on a regular, consistent basis. So that's kind of it. You all have heard me talk about the Stewardship for All Seasons program. That's our bigger program. This previous years, what we would do is like a 2-hour in-depth piece on planned giving. We'd bring in an ELCA Foundation representative and we'd talk to people about this. We've discovered we weren't moving the needle on getting people to really implement this culture of planned giving change. So this year in that program, we're doing a 5-month walk beside, January through May, where in January, we're going to do the gift acceptance policies. February, we're going to do endowment policies. March, we're going to lead the workshop for your leaders. April, I forget exactly what's planned, a little bit of education plus some material development. And then the same thing for May, to begin to make sure that we don't just tell you should do this and then kind of leave you. So that's in our other program. The oh, I had a thought and I lost it. Oh, the reason we're doing that is even as we walk beside hospitals and nursing homes and colleges, same thing that happens in our churches happens there, where they have people that had titles like me, Vice President of Advancement, back when I was at the camps. We get busy with other stuff. You know, the annual fund needs money, or we have this capital campaign come up and we never get to this. And so we just can't allow our client. The reason I added this to this Beginning a Culture of Generosity program is because we can't afford not to be highly engaged in planned giving work anymore. There's too much at stake. Our congregational demographics lend itself very, very well to the gifts we're talking about. And I think we can capture a whole bunch of them. We've just got to kind of work at it. The twice-a-year annual planned giving workshops. Certainly for one of them, and I know the DC Synod has, and I know North Carolina Synod has, for one of those at least, bring in an ELCA Foundation person. For another one, you can bring somebody in that, like if you have anybody like me in your congregation that does this work, that can just kind of give people broad strokes, that works. If you've got somebody that works for Thrivent, they can do it. You know, but certainly one of them should be the ELCA Foundation. They do great work. And by the way, the answer to who should manage your endowment is the ELCA Foundation, if you ever wonder. Don't have a group of people. It's usually a bunch of grouchy old men that try to pick whether pork bellies or international stocks are going to do better next quarter. Leave it to the ELCA Foundation. They've got a whole lot more money under management. They have much better managers. Let them manage it, and just, you all spend more. Congregations should spend their energy trying to get new people to include the church in their estate giving, rather than spend their time managing the money that is given. So, and by the way, I think every endowment should pay out 5% annually, regardless of what the market's done. So, all right, I just gave you a bunch of stuff. And Lamar put your gift planner for the DC Synod in the chat box. Thanks for that, Lamar. I gave you a bunch of stuff, and I know a lot of the vocabulary is new for you. So what questions do y'all have on plan giving or follow-up or anything else? I'm best at stewardship related. I believe most congregations do require a vote on gift acceptance policies. That it may be a council action, but it could very well be a congregation-wide action. I'm not a constitutional expert. on gift policies, they should work whether the gift is $10,000 or $10 million, by the way. And you'll save yourself any anxiety over receiving one of those gifts, because you'll know what you're going to do with it. So other questions?
You talked about charitable gift annuities and those sorts of gifts being on the rise. We're not set up to do that. Is that where we say to the ELCA Foundation, help us with this, or who do we call for that sort of thing?
Thank you so much for asking that question, because I wanted to say this. Don't you dare manage gift annuities yourself. They are a liability on your balance sheet. And if you want to really upset somebody, miss a payment on one of those one time. No, use the ELCA Foundation, the In Faith Foundation, or your local community foundation to manage your gift annuity portfolio. There is not a congregation in the ELCA that should be managing their own annuities. They are a liability. There are people who outlive the annuity, and therefore there's a loss. It doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen, and you don't need to be that church. And defaulting on an annuity, you got all kinds of legal problems. So no, ELCA Foundation, the In Faith Foundation, or your local community foundation for that, never the congregation. Thank you so much for asking that. Somebody else, I think, had a question.
So Mike, I heard you saying 1.5 to 2.5 million on facility care for endowment. So I guess what would be your recommendation if you've set up sort of a mission endowment, which is all externally focused at the beginning, and that's moving along, but you need to grow that, but setting a vision for that sort of thing. I mean, what do you generally see congregations do, like two endowment funds?
Yeah, so I don't think what you've got is wrong. I just think it would be great to have an also. And so this is just what I would do if I got to have complete power over your congregation. I would say, hey, we're going to launch a new endowment. And in the meantime, we're going to change our gift acceptance policies that unrestricted gifts that come through people's estates are going to go to the new endowment for the facility care. If you still want to support the other endowment because you have passion for that, just restrict your gift. Like, you can still give to that. But in the meantime, unrestricted gifts are going to be used to build this facility endowment so that the next generations who actually, I think, find more joy in giving outreach money than facility money will be able to do that even through the annual budget more. And those of us who are older who love this building will have the privilege of caring for that in perpetuity, kind of thing. So I would just launch a new one and say, we're going to cap that at $2 million in 2020 dollars, and then we'll switch back to funding the other endowment. In the meantime, if you prefer the other endowment, just put that in the gift line. Is that?
Yep.
And by the way, I don't ever I have one exception, but I don't ever like to fund endowment from gifts from people who are alive. Okay, I like to fund endowment through estates. The only nuance to that is if somebody wants to give what's called a qualified charitable distribution out of their IRA and give that as more of a major gift to an endowment during their lifetime, instead of having to wait until their death. But for the most part, if somebody wants to give you $1,000, feed somebody. There are hungry people today. Let the living do that. But when you pass away, your legacy gift should be what builds endowments. I have fairly strong feelings about that. I have people argue with me about it all the time, and that's fine. They're wrong. But that was a joke, by the way, just saying for the recording. But anyway, other questions?
Do most congregations require a congregational vote for gift policy?
I think they do. I think you're going to have to check constitutions. I'm sure the council at least has to approve it. that may very well be one of those threshold issues that the congregation has to put in place. I don't know the answer to that one. Sorry.
I think Yvonne Limbo is a good resource on that question.
Sure. Sure. Other questions? I do believe that everybody on the endowment team should have the church included as a beneficiary to their estate. And if not, they shouldn't be serving on the endowment team. And if you need to play that part of the video for them, feel free. This is another one of those things that it's great to say, join me in doing this. So. Our blog tends to have some planned giving stuff every once in a while on it, if you're interested in that. But this is, man, don't you wish somebody 40 years ago would have really devoted some time to this? You know, and you'd have a $3 million endowment pushing out $150,000 a year for your ministry. Wouldn't that be awesome? Well, let's leave a gift to the next generation. So I was the beneficiary at the camps that I worked at. We began to get estate gifts coming in, and when I started, the endowment was under $1 million, and now I think it's closing in on 5 million. It needs to be 20, but it's getting there. It's working in the right direction. So I just put in the chat box, Fortress Press, they love a good special. If you all want a council and finance team supply of my book, if you buy 15, they give a 25% discount off the total order. I'm just going to leave that there. The coupon code is there for you if you want it. I think it's good till the end of the month. So, by the way, it was #2 on Fortress Press. So, any other questions for us before we sign off today? Yeah, I think this is one that can really be worth some extended time. Ron, I think certainly being post-campaign there could be one of the next things to kind of dive into. But anyhow, anybody else, anything for us?
It's on my list.
Very good. Very good. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Great to see you. And if you have any results you want to share with me, or even any results you don't want to share with me, please reach out. I'm happy to take a look. And if you get early results and you're not sure what to do about them, reach out to me and let me help interpret them. And we might even come up with some ideas of what to do in between time. There might be a step to add that might shift it. So for those of you that forget, my email just appeared in the chat box. Feel free to reach out. All right. Good to see y'all.